I just want to listen to this.
So hi, everybody. I believe we have started and everyone should be in the room. Welcome to this webinar, a webinar series called EO Supporting Nature Conservation. Today's webinar is titled Eco Schemes Under the Cap. We're going to start very shortly, but I just have a couple of housekeeping rules. So for anyone who's not speaking at the time, if you can please mute your microphone. There will be options for questions at the end. We are recording the webinar, and we will also allow for questions in the chat. So please, everybody, please place any questions you want into the chat. We're going to have a Q&A session at the end, and hopefully we'll have some nice interaction. The presentation will also be shared afterwards for the participants. We also have a survey that we would like the participants to take part in. So we will also share the link for that in the chat. So we can go to the next slide and I can talk you through some of the agenda for today. So my name is Dara Boyle. I work with Evenflow, and we are part of the Stakeholder Engagement Facility, which is an ESA-funded initiative. The agenda today, we're going to introduce a little bit of both Eurosite and the Stakeholder Engagement Facility, which is called SEF. We're then having a topic introduction on Earth observation for CAP monitoring and eco-scheme monitoring, which is part of the new CAP. We then have two case studies, two European Space Agency funded projects, actually, called People for CAP and AI-based intelligence detection. And then we'll be having a short panel discussion at the end where questions can be asked to the panel and to all the speakers. So please feel free to get involved. We have a very small icebreaker at the beginning here, so there's going to be some interaction with the audience throughout the presentations. We will be using Mentimeter. So just to get everyone used to Mentimeter and used to using it, can you please use the code on the top of the screen? You go to menti.com and the code is 54320385, or you can use the QR code on screen. We want you to get used to using Mentimeter, so this is the icebreaker, but we also want to know who's actually at the webinar and what your experience is with Earth observation, otherwise called EO throughout this presentation. So please go to menti.com and let us know your current level of experience with Earth observation, and we can keep this open for a while. We will be moving on very shortly to the speakers, but nice to see some interaction here already. We have 11 responses. Anyone again can go to menti.com and let us know what your experience is with Earth observation. It's just to get used to using the interactivity here. Okay, so we're kind of leaning towards the no experience, kind of 50-50 with EO data and service providers. So this is good to know. Okay, that question can remain open and you can still fill it in while we continue. So without further ado, again, I am Dara Boyle. I work with Evenflow. We're a consultancy based in Brussels. And with us today, we have Wojtek and Clive from Eurosite, and they're going to give a little overview of Eurosite itself. So please, Wojtek, I believe it's you.
Hello, everyone. I'll try to share the screen. I'm afraid I cannot. Oh, change the slide. That's perfect now. Hello again. I am Wojtek Knus. I'm a project officer in Eurosite, the European Land Conservation Network, and I'm here to welcome you all on behalf of our network. And I hope you will join our second webinar in the series. So Eurosite, European Land Conservation Network, was created in 1989, so more than 30 years ago. And we are there to provide opportunities for practitioners to network and exchange experience on practical site management. And our motto is Europe where nature is cared for, protected, restored, and valued by all. And the network is based in the Netherlands. Our secretariat is in Tilburg, but I'm speaking to you from Poland, in Krakow. We've got at the moment 80 members, but the network is growing. We've got both organizational and individual members from 26 countries across Europe. So it's a pan-European network with members from EU, but also other European countries. And we cooperate closely with International Land Conservation Network, with European Landowners Organization, Natura 2000 by geographical process, and European Space Agency Stakeholder Engagement Facility, and this is the result of this cooperation you will see today. And for example, Society for Ecological Restoration. We are involved also in UNEP Global Peatland Initiative, so we are focused on networking, communication, biodiversity conservation projects. For example, within Horizon or Life, and also today it is a cooperation within one of live projects, and we are focused also on ecosystem restoration, stakeholder involvement, and that's why we are trying to involve some of stakeholders from our network here to get some knowledge about use of remote sensing in connection with agriculture. And now I would like to pass the floor to Clive Harford, the chair of one of our working group, remote sensing and biodiversity monitoring working group. Clive, the floor is yours.
Okay, thanks, Wojtek. I'm just waiting for the controls to appear. So. Right, okay. Yes, as Wojtek said, I'm the chair of the Eurosite Remote Sensing and Biodiversity Monitoring Working Group. The working group was formed in 2019 following suggestions from the floor at a Natura 2000 monitoring workshop on new technologies. The ultimate aim of the workshop is to facilitate information exchange between remote sensing technicians, land managers, and conservation managers for delivering biodiversity management and monitoring. The working group currently involves participants from 14 European countries, but we're looking to fill some gaps in there also. And other goals are to provide links to relevant online training videos, webinars, manuals, articles, and case studies on a Eurosite resource centre. So hopefully this recording will be lodged there eventually, as and when the resource centre is up and running. To create the possibility for personal consultations as necessary with other members of the working group. So maybe some of the remote sensing technicians who can facilitate help for people on the ground, and to enable social network interactions, e.g., for example, through the Eurosite online media and events. If anyone has any questions about Eurosite generally, or Eurosite's remote sensing and biodiversity monitoring group, please feel free to email either myself or Wojtek on the email addresses here. The presentations are being shared, I understand, so you don't need to write anything now. Okay, thank you. That's all I wanted to say.
Thanks, Clive, and thanks to Wojtek as well. I'll give a quick overview of SEF. As I said, it stands for the Stakeholder Engagement Facility. So this is funded by the European Space Agency, ESA, and the idea with SEF is that we're trying to make more people aware of space-based solutions, particularly Earth observation solutions, and provide them with the first steps on how they can get involved and start using these kind of tools. So typically the kind of issues we see when it comes to people adopting any type of technology, but in particular space-based technologies, there are 3 steps: awareness, acceptance, and adoption. So people may not be actually aware that Earth observation and space-based tools are something they can use in agriculture. And then this is where we can step in and highlight the use of these tools. Particularly in agriculture itself, it actually is a relatively well-known technology at this point, but people at the acceptance stage or adoption stage, they may struggle to understand where they can go to get these tools, where they can get data, who the service providers are. So this is where we can provide more practical support and technical support as well. So that's the whole idea with the SEF project. We can go to the next slide. And just so a little bit about today's webinar, obviously the theme is CAP-based monitoring and eco schemes. So we're going to showcase some of the technologies and services that have been developed through various ESA projects. And a big point of today is to get feedback from the people who are actually listening and watching the webinar. So you can obviously put questions in the chat. We have a survey we would like everyone to also fill in. And we also have this interactive Menti feature. So please feel free to ask all the questions you have. Please feel free to interact with Menti, and please fill in the survey at the end. So the next item on the agenda is actually, we have Tamer van der Waal with us. He has been using satellite data for more than 30 years as a scientist, a project coordinator, and an entrepreneur. And he's worked very closely in monitoring and controlling of CAP subsidies, policy assessments, and farming applications. So Tamer, we can hand it over to you, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Der. Thank you very much, and welcome from me as well. I've been asked to talk a little bit about Earth observation and how it's used in monitoring, administrating, and controlling CAP subsidies, and in particular the eco schemes. As Der said, I've been working in Earth observation and agriculture for a long time already, and basically did quite a lot on governmental applications. First, also worked in collaboration with the Joint Research Center of the European Commission. But the last years, I'm more involved into smart farming. And it's quite interesting to see how farmers and governments are basically using exactly the same type of satellites and the same type of data for completely different purposes. So let's dive into this CAP and ecosystem business. I was trying to forward the slide, but it takes a while, apparently. There it is. So a short history. Of course, the Common Agricultural Policy from the European Union is around since the 50s, but in 1992, there was a big reform. It's called the McSherry reform. And from that day onwards, it was no longer price interventions and market ordering aspects, but it was the CAP subsidies were linked to land use and farmers. And this also introduced completely new ways of administrating and controlling how the subsidies are used. Actually, this 1992 reform was the first, I think European, but also globally the first regulation that explicitly mentioned Earth observation as a tool for managing and controlling these subsidies. And I think it was gave quite a boost to the use of satellite data for agricultural applications, especially for governmental applications. So at the Joint Research Center, there was this MARS unit, monitoring agricultural resources, that up till then was mostly involved in production estimates because of this price intervention activity. And now they changed into supporting the Commission and the member states in monitoring and control of land use. So a lot of activities were done. For instance, the whole software systems to develop computer-aided photo interpretation of satellite imagery, but also aerial photos. There was an introduction of all kinds of GIS tools for registering and monitoring parcels. This is now known as the Land Parcel Information System. And every EU member state has these land parcel information system data, and many of them are also publishing it as open data. And I think this will be obligatory in a few years for everybody anyway. So this is a great aid, and also for people who are in the Earth observation business, because this means you have a very up-to-date and controlled and checked set of field boundaries that you can use if you analyze satellite data. But farmers had to draw in their fields, and of course, since the premiums were now linked to hectares, also the controls were very strict on the hectares. So there was all kinds of tools developed to go in the field, and you see on the picture here 2 examples of people with different types of tools to measure exactly the area of claimed land by farmers. And any deviations resulted, of course, in a deviation in the subsidy. And then, of course, there was a control with remote sensing, where the normal control was replaced by remote control, where satellite data was collected and used. This was originally at a 5% of the total land area, but today satellite data is used to control 100% of the land area farmers. Let me see if, there it is. This common agricultural policy basically has 2 pillars. There's this income support, which is linked to area and hectares of a farmer. And there's a rural development, which is much more into other activities, also related to environment and climate. And both pillars have their own subsidy schemes and ways of how the farmers can access these supports. But there's a big change since 2023, since the current budget period. The theme is basically we move from compliance to performance. So that means that we're not just providing income support as European Commission for complying with the regulations. So the number of hectares, the type of things you'd have to do, the statutory management requirements that belong to it. But we move to performance. Actually, the Commission idea is that the Commission subsidy, the payments are used to improve the environmental performance and the climatic performance of agricultural activity. And that's one big change. So it becomes much more complicated in that sense. The other thing is that the Commission said, well, there were so many comments from member states about how Brussels didn't understand their national goals and their national ideas, that the Commission said, well, now you can have it. You can have your own national CAP strategic plan, where you tell the Commission how you want to implement the regulation and how you want to do that for your specific land and your specific structures. And we just come check on the basis of that. And these have to involve, of course, the environmental and climate goals. And of course, obviously, in the Mediterranean or in Scandinavia, these are completely different in implementation. So that's what happened. And as part of this income support, there was also this payment for performance was also introduced, this eco schemes. So these eco schemes are schemes where farmers are paid for doing things that are good or improving the environmental performance or the climatic performance. These schemes need to be included in the CAP strategic plans of every country. So also every country has to have at least one eco scheme, and at least 25% of the budget should be addressed to these eco schemes. So it's quite a substantial incentive for farmers to do something different than they've been doing so far. And it goes beyond the mandatory requirements. So there are, of course, a lot of requirements already related to agriculture. For instance, compliance with the Water Framework Directive. But the eco schemes are going further than that, beyond that. And again, satellite data is used monitor all these kind of things. So what are these eco schemes? So basically they're payment schemes. So that means that money involved, and that always means that there should be some kind of auditable trail of what a farmer is claiming and what he is receiving and how decisions around that are made. So it's a payment scheme, and it rewards and incentivizes farmers to take action towards a more sustainable farm and land management, with the objective to maintain these public goods, the commons, so to say. And the environment, the climate, all these kind of things. And although participation is voluntary, there's a significant incentive with the money involved. And I mentioned that already. Member states are obliged to have one eco scheme in their plans. And yeah, the interesting thing is, of course, that what I mentioned earlier, the Pillar 2, the rural development, is also including some of these agroecological control measures. So there is some kind of a duality sometimes. Some measures end up in the eco schemes and some end up in Pillar 2. And it's all about additionality. So it's not doing the same thing you've all been doing so far, but you have to do something new. And this table is just an indication of how it looks like. It's a study of 15 member states, so not the whole European Union, but only 15 member states. And you see there's a range in these 15 countries between 3 number of measures for Hungary till 21 in the Netherlands. So there's a lot of differentiation in that, and every country, of course, with this national CAP strategic plan, can introduce whatever they want and how they want to do it. So there's a lot of differentiation there and a lot of prioritization from the different countries. So if you look at how are we going to monitor and control eco schemes, then this slide, I think, is hopefully very insightful. It's a slide I borrowed from the Joint Research Center. And basically what it says is that even though satellite imagery is maybe not as sharp as you want to identify different objects, you can still see things that are representative for different activity. So this scheme is that if you understand what you're looking at, if you know what to look for, if you know what to see, then satellite data can be very helpful and insightful to make you support or deny claims of farmers on different activities. So this is very important to understand that we're not doing any real object recognition. Well, in some cases, but most cases we're just developing what is called markers. We develop markers with Earth observation that are identifying different aspects, and sometimes these are activities, and sometimes these are other things. So this is a slide I borrowed from Compass, who is responsible for the monitoring in Ireland and other countries as well. And this is basically the high-level process flow. So what they do with this AMS stands for the Area Monitoring System. They collect satellite data, Sentinel-1, which is the radar satellite, Sentinel-2, the optical satellite, and all these data are collected and brought together, and then they're looked at for a specific field of interests. So, for instance, a single parcel. And based on the satellite data, a timeline for this parcel will be achieved, derived. And all these, on this timeline, there are different things are feasible. For instance, in the middle, you see this graph of vegetation density, the NDVI index. And you see where it goes up and down, and basically you can analyze if the crop is growing, if the crop is harvested, or in case of grassland, if it's mowed. All these things are visible from these kind of things. So and every of these events is what we call a marker. And then these markers and this timeline is brought together, and then some expert viewer need to analyze and visualize what he's seeing, and maybe find supporting information about what he's seeing, and then conclude, oh yes, the farmer says this is grassland. Yes, we see it's grassland. and it has been mowed, so there's active management on it, so it's eligible for this and this scheme. Yeah, so the journey for a payment decision is basically looking like this. So there's this land parcel information system, what I mentioned already. From that you derive, and it is on the left column, we go down, the field of interest. Then the first question, is the field of interest monitorable? If so, is the crop claimed correctly? If not, you update the LPS, otherwise you continue. If it's monitorable, if it's claimed correctly, and is there an activity detected, then there can be a positive payment decision. It can happen that satellite data is not completely answering the things we want to know. And in that case, the paying agency of a member state can send the farmer a message and ask him to take what is called a geotag photo. A geotag photo is a photo taken with your mobile, but with a special app, so you cannot manipulate the photo, and it will provide additional evidence to the assessors to decide whether your claim was legitimate or not. So the satellite data in combination with this geotag photo will then help the people to make the right decisions. And if it then still is inconclusive, then they can always send somebody to the farm to do an on-the-spot check. But the whole system is basically built to reduce that on-the-spot checks as much as possible, because that's a very expensive and not so very scalable approach. So in terms of eco schemes, what are then the things we are monitoring? Well, first of all, crop classification is still very important, also for the eco schemes, also for the rotation of crops. Grassland is mowing and grazing activity is monitored with satellite data. The homogeneity of grassland is monitored. That is, for instance, to detect herb-rich grasslands. For the mowing, of course, the timing of the mowing is important, because in some areas mowing is forbidden until a certain date, to give the birds a chance to come out of the eggs and grow and run away or fly away. Plowing is, of course, a very important activity in the eco schemes. Non-plowing is very beneficial for the soil and therefore for the climate. The presence of catch crops can be monitored also, again, and harvest. So there's a lot of things that can be detected from satellite data that are relevant to all these eco schemes. But of course, things are changing very rapidly, and farmers are not just managing the whole field, but they're also managing the edges, which is also part of an eco scheme or another agroecological measure. So these kind of small buffer zones, like 3 meters or less, are often very difficult to detect with satellite data. So there's increased complexity. Not everything can be detected, and there's continuously people working on innovations, trying to find new ways of using satellite data or other integration with other data sets to still come up with the right information, the right markers, and to help paying agencies with these monitoring of the eco schemes. So in short, the EU Earth observation process is well, selecting imagery, logically, identify the markers. This is done on the parcel level, and then building rules based on these markers. So for instance, if we detect mowing on the grassland, we want to know if the mowing was not before the 15th of May, because that could be a crucial date for the birds to have a chance to fly out of the egg. At this moment, since 2023, the monitoring is done 100% of the area, so the so-called wall-to-wall monitoring. And typical markers, well, I mentioned them already in the previous slide: classification, mowing, tillage, green cover, etc. So there's a lot of things we can detect, a lot of things we cannot detect, and for that we often call in the help of the farmer with this geotag photo. So to wrap up, Eco schemes are implemented per member state, so with this within these national strategic plans. They can be monitored with Earth observation with this area monitoring system, 100% wall to wall. And many countries use the Copernicus satellites, the Sentinel-1 and Sentinel-2 sets for the information, but also Planet Fusion, which is a data set from the Planet company, which is gives daily level information, is also used to establish these timelines. In the Netherlands, the 100% monitoring is run every month by the company called NEO. Yeah, and basically the data flow is you create markers, you have rules, you also collect farmers' feedback, and then you make a decision on the payment. And this is basically done with what is called the traffic light approach. So if the traffic light is red, then the decision is that the claim is unjust, definitely not correct, not established with satellite data, what the farmer has been claiming. If it's green, everything is okay, and if it's yellow, it's undecisive. And that's when the geotech photo or the on-the-spot control can be used as a tool to get better information. And just to realize, since the introduction of the McSherry reform in 1992, this whole GIS system to manage and control information of farmers and farmer claims on all kinds of income support is matured significantly. And basically the quality target is now that every member state needs to have less than 2% errors in their decisions. So that is a very, very low error rate. And many countries achieve that. And this has to be in the back of your mind if you are looking at Earth observation tools, because scientists sometimes even are very happy if they have an 80% accuracy. But in this case, 98 is required. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Tama. That was an excellent overview of the CAP itself and how Earth observation is used for the CAP and for the eco schemes within the CAP. Okay, we're going to hand over to the next speaker, which is Jan Misrich. Jan obtained his degree, his PhD in geoinformatics and remote sensing from Charles University in Prague. And since 2016, he has been working with Czech SME GSAT. Most of his work focuses on the topic of remote sensing in agricultural monitoring and in nature conservation. And Jan is going to tell us a little bit about the European Space Agency funded project, People for CAP. So Jan, the floor is yours. And can I ask, please, to keep it below 10 minutes, just in the interest of time, so that we can do questions at the end. Thanks very much, Jan.
Thank you for introducing me. So I hope that I can take control. Well, so yes. So as it was said by Dyer, my name is Jan Misrich, and so I would like to introduce our activities in People for New CAP project. So this is a ESA funded project which is mostly focusing on development and innovative EU-based products, indicators, methods, and tools to support paying agencies in, let's say, monitoring, fulfilling the rules of new eco schemes. But of course, it is not only the one side of the problem. The second perspective is on let's say the perspective from perspective of farmers, and therefore, so we are trying to cover all these perspectives within our project. So this project was a 2 years project. It was running from October 22 until October 24. And as for our project consortium, so except of GSAT, as a primary investigator, we cooperated with Wageningen University and Research from the Netherlands, the Swiss company Solenix, which is focusing on AI techniques, and the Czech company Clever Farm, which is focusing on, let's say, precision farming applications based on EO techniques. So as I mentioned, so we have there two types of early adapters of the results of our project. So on one side, there are the paying agencies. And here, so we are talking about the implementation of the EO-based techniques in their decision-making system on, let's say, assessment of the request from farmers. And farmers are the second part of our, let's say, primary users. And so there we were trying to find some applications on top of the standard EO-based products, which can help farmers in fulfilling several aspects of some predefined eco schemes. So therefore, we differentiated two different types of use cases within our project. So we have there 5 different use cases focusing on the needs from paying agencies. So these are in generally crop rotation, fallow lands, grassland management, winter soil cover and catch crops, and the work with geotagged photos. As it was mentioned in the previous presentation, this is also one very important aspect. So the second group of use cases is more farm oriented, and here we have 2 different use cases. The first one is focusing on calculation of farm carbon footprint. The second one is related to crop water management. I will explain these in more details in next slides. So the first use case is more or less about playing with the results of EO-based classification of crop types, where we are trying to answer 3 different questions, or we are covering their 3 different aspects. So the first one is compliance with crop rotation rules. So here we are trying to find the cases which are not in compliance with the defined rules of crop rotations using this EO-based data. The second one is related to the compliance with the rules of erosion-prone areas. So this means that we are checking if the farmers are not growing the crops which are not allowed on erosion-prone areas. And the last one is related to the compliance of farm with the rules of crop diversification. So here we are talking about, let's say, calculating the number or minimum number of the cultivating crops, their minimum relative shares, and if the farm is fulfilling all these rules, then so we can consider it as fulfilling all the rules. From more technical point of view, we are trying to provide the results of crop type classification on different level of details. And so the results of this decision-making system is always related, or it is always combined with some probability level. So we are not providing only a binary decision, yes, no, compliant, no compliant, but we always provide also the information how sure we are about this result of such analysis. So this crop rotation use case has been demonstrated in Czechia for 3 years, 2021 until 2023. And now the second use case is about land-lying fallow. So here we are talking about another use case which was mostly focusing on different types of fallow land. And so here we took into consideration all the rules which are defined for such type of land cover, and we were trying to answer the question if the management or the activities which can be observed by the EO or by the Earth observation techniques are in agreement to what is expected for such types of fallow land. So generally, it was based on analyzing temporal profiles of vegetation index called NDVI. And so the result of this use case was, let's say, in flagging all the fallow land parcels in 3 different categories, whether they are compliant with the rules or not, or we had there also another category for uncertain cases. So this use case has been demonstrated in Czechia, the Netherlands, Sweden, and Spain for 2022 as the reference year. The third use case was focused on extensive use of grassland. So here, the main reason of such use case was to identify grassland parcels which have no signs of management. So the main technical principle is some stepwise elimination of the parcels with high probability of management activities. And so finally, the results should be a subset of some suspicious parcels, which should be the subject of some, let's say, additional compliance verification. So the main principle of this use case was comparing the real profile of NDVI vegetation index, where we can see some features related to management activities, as it can be seen on the right side of the slide, where you have two different examples. One where you can see some features related to grassland activities, and you can compare it with the other example where there are no features within this NDVI profile, and here it means that it's most likely non-managed grassland. So using such analysis, we are trying to identify such unmanaged grasslands. And so the most important thing is that so we are not looking just on, let's say, real profiles of grassland, but we provide also some modeling or simulations how the profile of the given grassland area could look like if there is no management. And so based on this information, we are trying to prepare some analysis on grassland management intensity. So this use case has been demonstrated in Sweden, Spain, and in the Netherlands. And so we took into account a multi-annual approach, taking into consideration the years from 2020 until 2022. So the fourth use case is related to winter soil cover and catch crops. So it is again based on analyzing NDVI profiles. And here we are trying to answer the requirements of two different eco-schemes defined in the Netherlands, which are which are based on let's say identification the cases where we can observe winter catch crops which should cover at least 80% of the given parcels. So the question is whether the observed catch crop is really covering the majority or most of the parcel. And the second aspect here, which is taken into account, is also the temporal aspect. So it means that we take into consideration or also start of season and end of season of the given catch crop, and if this is in agreement of the requirements defined within these two use cases. Now we are coming to the first farm-related use case. So this is a use case related to detection of anomalies in canopy water status using some other vegetation indices which are very sensitive to the content of water in crop canopies. So here we are taking into account long-term temporal statistics of such vegetation indices to define so what should be the profiles or the temporal changes of the crop water status in time. And then we are trying to compare this, let's say, optimum status with the actually observed status using the actual Earth observation data. And here we are trying to identify the possible anomalies in crop water status. And then we take this information together to calculate some cumulative indicator of drought impact. So here we are taking into account such aspects as, for example, temporal duration of the drought anomalies, amplitude of drought anomalies, or temporal distance of a certain drought anomaly compared to the actual date. And finally, we take all these information together and we are trying to make some, let's say, analysis on which level this could have an impact on final year yield, which is observed at the end of growing season. Then the second farm-oriented use case is focusing on estimation of soil carbon content. Here we are trying to use the results of machine learning prediction or estimation of the actual soil organic content in Czechia. So, and our task was to compare whether these EO-based soil organic carbon estimation could be somehow integrated into calculation of farm carbon footprint. Because so the standard or conservative approach here is that there are some fixed carbon sequestration coefficients which are related to a certain land cover type or land use type, like for example the arable land. And here we were trying to, let's say, update or link these carbon sequestration coefficients to the actual level of soil carbon content. So we performed there a demonstration for 3 different farms, which were differing by the type of management. So we had there 2 farms with conventional management and 1 organic farm. So we were interested how we can observe some, let's say, differences between these differences in management types. Well, and there should be the last use case, which is related to geotagged photos. So here there were in fact 2 subtasks within this use case. So we were using an AI-based method for automated classification of these geotagged photos. So this was more or less focusing on automatic identification of grassland management types. So we were working with thousands of geotagged photos, and our task was to categorize them into 3 groups. So the first one were the photos where we can observe the signs of mowing. The second one was related to grazing, and the third one were the cases where no clear signs of management was detectable using this AI techniques. So this was the first subtask of this use case. As for the second subtask, so we were using AI-based analysis for checking geotagged photos quality. Because so as a result of our consultations with the paying agencies, this is very hot topic for them. So how they should set the rules on, let's say, which level of quality of the geotagged photos is still acceptable for their purposes. So therefore, we prepared an AI-based technique for checking several quality indicators like the level of brightness, contrast, hue, blur, saturation, and so on. And so we prepared some reference data sets, reference tables, which shows so the ranges of the recommended quality indicators. So what should be the recommended quality of the geotagged photos to be really useful for some AI-based analysis. So that's the end of my presentation. I know that it was really quick. I hope I was on time. And of course, if there are any questions, so don't hesitate to ask me on chat or for example on email. Yeah, thank you for listening my presentation.
Thank you, Jan. Thank you very much for the very interesting presentation. We will move on to Catherine Akinyi Odera, who is an Earth Observation and GIS specialist, and she currently serves as the Earth Observation Project Manager at Capacita, who are a science-driven radar remote sensing company in Estonia. And Catherine is going to tell us about the AI-based tillage detection. Over to you, Catherine.
Thank you, Dev. Just trying to take over the screen. Not sure if it's possible. Okay. Okay, yeah. Thank you. So I will get started. Okay, so thank you, Dave, for the introduction. Yes, hello everyone, and thank you for inviting me for this presentation. So we'll be talking about the AI-based tillage detection for improved agriculture and climate policies, which is a project that we were undertaking that is funded by ESA. And I'll just take you through some of the how we came about the results that I'll be showcasing at the end of the slides. But then before we get started with the results that we obtained through this project, I would first start by introducing what tillage is, as this was one of the main objectives of this project, using Earth observation data and machine learning algorithms to try and detect the type of tillage activity that is being undertaken on a piece of parcel. So tillage is referred to as the activity that is normally undertaken by farmers to prepare the soil for planting and also for cultivation of the soil after planting. And the main aim of why we wanted to detect tillage in the scope of this project was to try and support the work that is being undertaken under the Common Agriculture Policy, that's CAP, as it has already been mentioned by the previous speakers. And primarily because tillage is one of the use cases that is listed for subsidy checks under the Common Agriculture Policy, and also that is for the old Common Agriculture Policy, and under the new Common Agriculture Policy is to support the work under the European Green Deal, and to be more specific, the goal for the eco schemes, which provides stronger incentives for climate and environmentally friendly farming practices. And if we are talking of tillage types that are actually very that support environmental conservation, we have to also talk about the different types of tillage practices so that you would well understand what you are trying to detect and how we can tell them apart. So when it comes to the type of tillage practices, we have got two broad categories. The first is conventional tillage, and the second one is conservation tillage. For conventional tillage, it's categorized as the type of tillage that leaves behind less than 15% of crop residue. And the type of tillage practices that fall under this category includes plowing and harrowing. And the other type of tillage category, which is conservation tillage, which leaves behind is categorized as any type of tillage that leaves behind crop residue that is greater than 15%. And still under conservation tillage, we have got, sorry, very sensitive. Under conservation tillage, we have got other types of tillage categories, which is reduced tillage and zero tillage. And reduced tillage leaves behind crop residue on the field, which is ranges between 15 to 30%. And zero tillage leaves behind crop residue that is greater than 30%. As an illustration, you can see on the right-hand side the type of tillage operations that are undertaken under different tillage categories. For conventional tillage, you can see that the number of operations are actually more than no tillage. Under no tillage, you can see that the farmer will only undertake planting and spraying of the crops, which is barely nothing. No manipulation is undertaken on the soil. So moving on. Okay, so we have already talked about the different types of tillage practices, and we have already mentioned that conservation tillage is the one that is recommended since it's environmentally friendly, and conventional tillage has got a lot of negative impact on the environment. So just to illustrate like some of the issues that come about when we are applying conservation tillage and why it's even put in place in the first place, is because conventional tillage has got extreme or negative impact on the environment and agriculture as a whole. And just as an illustration, you can see the image on the left. which shows the positive aspects that come into play when we introduce conservation tillage, and some of the negative aspects that come into play when we are undertaking conventional tillage. So just to mention briefly, for the negative impacts of conventional tillage, you can see that this will impact things like soil erosion, as this type of tillage is very extreme to the soil. It's very manipulative to the soil, and that leads to the soil being loose, and which makes the soil susceptible to water erosion or wind erosion. And then we have got also other aspects such as extreme weather, which is also attributed to the release of greenhouse gas emissions, which is as a result of conventional tillage, as the soil carbon and the nitrogen that is stored in the soil is released into the atmosphere. And if you look at the positive aspect of incorporating conservation tillage in the farming activity, is that there is more water storage in the soil, better soil structure, more nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus is retained in the soil. And also there is also richness of species diversity that is also maintained. So this is just to show you, to just illustrate what are some of the advantages and disadvantages of the different types of tillage. Moving on to now talk about the AI-based tillage detection project. So this project was funded by ESA, and the project ran from September 2023 to September 2024. So we have completed this project. And the area of interest was the Baltic Sea region, which comprises of 8 countries, that is Sweden, Finland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Northern Germany, and Denmark. And for the data that we used in this project was satellite data. We utilized Copernicus satellite data, that is Sentinel-1 and Sentinel-2, and also Landsat. And for the training of the models and validation, we required ground truth data, that is tillage ground truth data, that was obtained from farmers within the Baltic Sea region countries and also the paying agencies. And the models that we developed using this data that we acquired, we developed conservation tillage detection model and conventional tillage detection model. As an illustration to how we came about the results that I will be showing you in the next slide, is that we used the satellite data. From satellite data, we are able to derive information such as the spectral signature of whatever is happening on the field. If there's crop residue that is left on the field, the spectral signature will be very different from the type of tillage that leaves no crop residue on the field. So we were able to tell apart the different types of tillage based on the crop residue that we are able to pick from the spectral signature that we would ideally derive from satellite data. And apart from the spectral signature that will derive from optical satellite data, we also made use of SAR satellite data, that is Sentinel-1, which is very sensitive to the changes in the field pattern. So whenever a farmer would undertake an activity such as plowing, and there's a change in the structure of the soil, this will be picked by SAR satellite data, and we could use this information in training our model. So apart from the satellite data, as I had mentioned, we also made use of the tillage ground truth data, which would ideally provide information to the model that at this point we have plowing that took place, and this was the spectral signature that coincides with the satellite data that we have in place. So that will be used to train the model and validate it, and as a result, we'll end up with a classification of the different activities that are happening within a parcel. Like, for example, what you can see on the right, which is a satellite, an image of a different parcel and the type of tillage that has taken place when we classify that using the crop residue that is left behind. So I'll now show the results that we were able to obtain from this project. And the first image, we have the satellite data image, and then also the results from the model. So this is the first image, shows an example of an agricultural field in Denmark in 2021, where we were able to, the model detected crop residue on the field for a period of 50 days. And then later on, you see that the model does not detect anything. Probably the farmer has taken away the crop residue that was there, maybe for animal feed or whatever reason that it was, but we couldn't tell. And then later on, we could see that conventional tillage took place. And then we have the second example, which shows the model detecting conventional tillage on a field in Sweden in 2021, and it detected correctly a tillage event that happened before the planting season, and then the other tillage event that took place after the planting. So you can see that the model was able to detect the areas whereby we don't have, like, and in this region, we had low crop residue percentage. And in this first example, we have got high crop residue percentage that is present in the field. So yes, and our key takeaway from this project was that the results of this project could be utilized by agriculture paying agency, carbon emission trading entities, agriculture insurance agencies, amongst others, since we are able, there's a correlation between the amount of crop residue that is detected on a field with the soil carbon that is also retained within the field. So that is why this information would ideally be of interest to people who are working in the field, such as carbon emission trading entities. And as a general outcome of the results that we got, the results were generally good, since this was a generic model, but we think that we would achieve better results if the model was tailored to a single country, for example, for instance. Yes, and I know that this was presentation was pretty rushed and it doesn't have like a lot of content as we would like. But then if you like to learn more about the project, I have also linked some of the links to some information that you'd find useful. And also if you'd like to contact us for more information about the project. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Also very informative. Okay, we're going to run on to the last section of the webinar today, which is a panel discussion. I'll be moderating it, but I would like to introduce you our two speakers. So we have Christine Bayor. She is actually an active farmer in the foothills of the Bavarian Alps. And she's also the co-founder and managing director of Eraland, that is currently working on setting up a living lab there. And we also have Boris Hinojo. He began his career at the Institute of Agricultural Biodiversity and Rural Development and worked on projects related to the management and conservation of biodiversity. And in 2016, along with two colleagues, founded 3E Data, which is an environmental engineering spin-off from Campus Terra from USC. So welcome to both Christine and Boris. One question I had, and I would like to come to you first, Christine, is as a farmer, as an active farmer, what is your experience with Earth observation tools? Do you have experience with these tools, and are you interested in using them?
Well, I get observed as a farmer every year. Well, we heard this with the eco scheme thing. Well, yeah, it's I think at the moment I experience the downsize of this whole EO business. So maybe I just explain, we are grassland farmers here in Bavaria, and we are mountain farmers. And finally, with this shift into the second pillar, we really get money for all the good stuff we did the last 200 years, maybe, on this site here where we are. But we also get quite restricted now. I was already the one who was walking got the message on the phone, walking half an hour on this field to take this picture to prove that this is still grassland and to prove that the marker was wrong. But yeah, I can see that because we are really into this climate change business and we are looking for different solutions in regenerative agriculture, we can see that everything is shifting and it's not helpful to get more restricted through more control and observation. So I think we are actually thinking that we stop this sooner or later and find other ways to get financed for our services here. I think this doesn't help our management. Yeah, our management, our farm ecosystem is far too complex to get some message from above, from superficial data or pictures and some advice what I have to do or not. So I think I'm quite critical now, but I think it's very important to talk about this because I'm not the only farmer who is thinking that way. And if we would like to keep a good progress with biodiversity and all the good stuff we could do, we should change this approach so that we really can get some benefit through I think a positive feedback through long-term monitoring would be good. But at the moment, we only get the negative part.
Okay. Well, very interesting to get another point of view on all of this, and very honest of you. So thank you for that. I'm sure it will stimulate some conversation. Before I ask Boris a question, I will mention, I know we've gone over time a little bit, but maybe if people can hang around for another 10 minutes or so, we'll be able to wrap things up fully then. So Boris, can you tell us a little bit about your background and your experience with Earth observation in your career? And what in your career, what have you seen as the kind of practical issues when it comes to people adopting these types of tools?
Well, in my career, I'm used to use Earth observation tools, mostly in my activity, like mapping habitats and assessing the conservation status of the habitats, and of course in some semi-natural habitats like grasslands that are very relevant for conservation. So the monitoring is very expensive, so the private authorities are seeking to do this in most cost-effective way. So that's why when Earth observation and remote sensing is entering action, and it's very relevant in this regard because it's almost impossible to monitor in the land. But like Christine said, we cannot use the Earth observation tools and these solutions to increase the burden in the farmers because it's an important issue. So we need to give them solutions and not more activity and burden regarding their activity in the field. So in this regard, this is very relevant, the Earth observation, and it's interesting to see all of these tools that are used for monitoring, support the monitoring of the agricultural policies, and trying to increase the efficiency of this. But we need to be aware that not only the Earth observation tools are fit for all the monitoring of the CAP and all of these schemes. And we work in some conservation result-based scheme payments for protected habitats and also for mapping and assessing the conservation status of this type of habitats, the grasslands. You can reach some parameters, but not all of them. So we need to improve these solutions, these tools. And for this, I will say that it will be interesting to mobilize all of the data that we have because of all of these years on the CAP. And even if this is a big burden for the farmers, but the farm book, digital farm book, is very relevant with all of this data or with the basic data that this farm book can have. If we can make available all this data for all the developers and the scientists to develop better tools and to use it to improve the self-conservation tools, it will be very, very relevant for try to make better solutions.
Thank you, Boris. I've noticed Clive actually has his hand up. Clive, do you want to ask a question?
Well, yes, I'd certainly like to make a point. I don't, from personal experience, I know you can detect sort of tillage and soil disturbances using remote sensing. There's no doubt about that. But I do wonder about the terms of conventional and conservation tillage, because there's no mention of biodiversity in this at all. And if you go to, you take the biodiversity factor into account, actually conventional disturbance is absolutely critical to the most rapidly declining suite of species in Europe, which are species associated with arable land and cultivation. If you go down the minimum tillage route, the so-called conservation route, one of the critical parts of that, it will be spraying off. It's absolutely favoured and recommended by the agrochemical companies. The first thing you do is spray all the vegetation off before you seed drill. This can't be good. And I think the term conservation is crazy. It's a complete misnomer for it. It's absolutely disastrous in terms of biodiversity, and you're pumping all these chemicals year after year into the system. So yes, there might be some release of carbon, more release of carbon through ploughing, but actually I think we're only hearing one side of the story, and I think it's a lot more complicated. So that's all I wanted to say, really.
No, thank you very much, Clive. It's a very relevant point. I see some chatter in the chat, which is great. Tama, I see you've been responding to Theo here. I'll also highlight you can see it on the screen now, but we're also asking the question, like, what are the biggest challenges for the audience when it comes to adopting EO-based tools? If anyone from the audience wants to ask a question, please feel free. You can raise your hand, and we can address that for you. And yeah, please interact with the Menti as normal. You have the code again at the top. So maybe I'll come back to Christine. So Christine, you said as a result of these Earth observation tools, things have got stricter, things have got more difficult for you when it comes to the operation of your farm. Are you interested in using the tools yourself or paying for any EO services yourself? Or do you just take the feedback from the EU on where you currently stand?
Well, I think the benefits you only can see in a bigger scale on a landscape level. So I think that's very important to have this, but maybe only every 5 years or every 10 years, this is enough. And just to check if everything is working or if the microclimate is changing through this new forest or the hedges. And yeah, but I think and maybe if you want to do land planning, you need this as well, but not for controlling, like Cliff said as well. I'm totally agree. Our system is too complex, and this is not helping at all. Not nature, not us, not everybody really, because it should be more individual. And it's changing every year, and I don't think that this observation is really reflecting what's really happening on the ground.
Okay.
So, for example, I am in this scheme and I have a very steep hill and with a very high biodiversity, and I have this scheme where I have to mow it once a year at least. But if it's really dry, not raining at all on this sunny hill, I might decide not to do this just to protect everything. But then I get observed or controlled, and I get the negative part. So or the other thing, I already get less money because I needed more animals this year because everything was really growing and had to get rid of the biomass, so I had to have more animals per hectare. So it's a problem. So
Do you think there should be some more nuance or allowances made for specific?
Yeah, I think it should be a completely different approach in general for this region, for the type of farm, for the farm, and if you can take the farmer with you and he understands what's all about, then he sees the benefits, he will do it, and still he needs some more space to do it a little 2 days earlier or later or whatever, because it's not helping like that.
So a little bit more,
yeah, and still we should get, if it's already getting monitored over the time, we should get a feedback, a positive feedback. Well, after 5 years, it developed like that, or the groundwater table is higher, or whatever. So that would be helpful as well. So, but we don't get this benefits yet.
Okay, very interesting. I see Bernadette, you have your hand up if you would like to make a comment or question.
Yeah, I think first of all, it's important to understand that the member states are at the starting phase of developing the algorithm. And of course, the new CAP initiative, the conformance-based CAP, I mean, motivates us to increase the diversity of the requirements, while the area monitoring system cannot always take it up. But I think there are two very important issue which will make the life better. First is this top-down approach, which we do with the Earth observation from wall to wall. So it will lead us to identify such facts and connections, also with the integration of the machine learning, which we haven't been able to integrate into the CAP planning. I'm talking about the second pillar, basically. So this top-down approach and the full continuity and the multi-annual analysis will show us a lot of trends and critical things which can be integrated into the new CAP. I think that's a very important issue. Like, think about the flood and then the waterlog management of permanent grasslands. There are a lot of issues with good experiences, but it will need time. So the new CAP came too fast for the member states. And I think it's understandable that a technology-driven knowledge cannot be just like from one year to the other pushed to the farmers, but it will come year by year. And the other point is this, the regionality of the intervention. So the full-scale top-down approach will allow the member states to differentiate between the interventions on regional level. This could have been done before as well on agri-environmental, but many of the member states did not believe with this opportunity because it's too complex. But today, with the new data and with the further analysis of the AMS result, it's an open gate and could lead to a very good direction. But for this, the scientific nature protection community also has to be able to reach the AMS data output and to analyze it. And this will come in the near future, we believe. So.
Okay, well, thank you, Bernadette. Maybe a message of hope there for the likes of Christine. And I see there's still a lot of chat going on, people saying they agree with Christine on the points that she made. I'm very aware of the time, and part of my job is to keep the time as much as I can. So we might wrap this up now soon, but before we leave, we do have a final Mentimeter question. So you're free to answer that question now. We can leave it open even beyond the webinar itself. But just to mention, we have another upcoming webinar as part of it's the third in the series, the third and last in the series, on the 9th of December at 2 o'clock, and it's on carbon stock assessment. So please feel free to register for that one. We also have a survey that we would like people to fill in. In the chat, Julia has included our emails, the generic emails for the SEF team. and the survey. So please, if you are still on the webinar, please do the survey. It won't take you very long, and it will really help us giving feedback to the likes of ESA. And please feel free to contact us. Go to our LinkedIn page, go to our website. They're all on the screen right now. And that's it. Thank you all very much for your participation. It's been very interesting and very interactive. Plenty of thoughts going on, so that's good. Thanks everybody, and please check out our website. Have a good afternoon.
Bye bye.